Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Alexander Lavin, founder and CEO of Pasteur Labs and ISI. And Alexander has a really strong background in AI research and in particular, probabilistic computing. Thanks for being on the show today, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Let's jump into it. So, as I mentioned, you've got this really impressive background, strong background. You've also had stints at NASA and Vicarious AI and also founded and exited companies. Can you tell us a little bit about your early career and how those experiences have shaped your journey in this tech industry?
Yeah, sure. And it's one that kind of like, I hear myself saying these words about my career and I'm like, people can't believe or take me for like being honest when I say that a lot of gratitude and just being fortunate in ways. Definitely my upbringing and place in life being able to choose the crazy risky ventures and assume everything's going to shut off one day and walk away with nothing and I'll still be able to support myself and family and so on. But also the guiding signal has been really challenges in technology that are attractive because they're new. You can't like Stack Overflow, copy and paste an answer to these things. And it's something that just fascinates me and forces me to learn and push and also kind of poke those challenges from angles that doesn't seem like they're normally being kind of prodded at or considered. And other part of being fortunate is like being, good at taking on these challenges that are deep in the maths and physics in a lot of ways. And also at a time when, software engineering, machine learning, and then even my background in aerospace is just a lot of good career opportunities out of those. So following the guiding signal of just challenging opportunities that can force me into uncomfortable learning situations, it's proven a really good signal so far.
Right. Were there any key takeaways from your early career that you've brought into your later ventures or current ventures?
Yeah. I would say kind of twofold. One would be as like a software engineer in industry, and it's the way we describe it around here a lot, and I'll express this to people interviewing it, is that we really care about industry hardened software engineers, and even thinking back to when I could not call myself anything close to that or a professional software engineer, but was in the thick of it. It was the responsibility and the diligence and the level-headedness and that was required of me. And those are things that I've carried with me for sure. They've been impactful every step of my career. But then I expect those certainly of at every level, every sort of seniority and position in my companies. But also, now that I've been more in the role of building the team that builds the cool things, not building the cool things myself, a lot of those lessons come from the leaders or people rather in leading positions, I would say, around me. And I honestly, I think most of those are lessons you would think on not to emulate. Um, Maybe because it's sort of like the negative experiences or observations you have of your managers and leaders and coworkers. It's just the sort of those kind of stick, or those are etched into memory easier. Um, but the positive characteristics and practices, even with shitty leaders,
Yeah,
I can. Am I allowed to say shitty?
you can say it, for
Cool.
sure.
A lot of those positive sort of notes, even in an instant, it really takes you, the individual, to be intentional and mindful to kind of pick up on that, but also like years later, be able to kind of pull that from the backlog and be like, I get it. That's why she did this. That's why he said it that way. And I have just sort of like little like GIF replay sort of things of previous CEOs and CTOs and how they even interacted with other people. And I'm like, really interesting. They played that card at that point. So there's, I mean, stacks of those cards, to use a awful analogy, that I carry with me.
Love that. Yeah, I guess absorbing everything that you go through and everything around you and figuring out how you can use it in your own way, like not just a lot of people just forget, right? Or don't pay too much attention. So that's probably
Yeah,
key.
it's like you might remember, but like, are you like intentionally thinking about maybe the context, the principle, the cause, the effect,
Yeah.
the subtleties of it, and then practicing those yourself. And when having interactions, even after our chat today, is like, I will debrief this in ways, and kick myself for not doing some things, but also know that I'll improve the next time.
Yeah, I think that's key. And something that I've heard in the past is like replaying the tape. That's something that you should always be doing, whether it's a pitch with a VC, an interview, meeting with your team, whatever it is. If you don't replay that tape, if you don't rethink through it, debrief, however you want to think about it, you're just going to do the same thing again. How are you going to improve? So, um, advice I wish I would follow in everything, but knowing that and trying to do it at the times that it matters, I think is crucial.
Right, right.
Let's switch gears and start talking about the company, because this is super interesting. Can you explain what Pasteur Labs and ISI do, and also how they work in conjunction with each other? Because it's quite unique.
Yeah, it's definitely a question that comes up a lot. People will read like a sentence or two on the website and be upset that it wasn't like clarifying for them. I understand that. I also don't understand why people expect me to fix that for them after our call. But the structure is unique, and a lot of that goes back to sort of a deal I made with myself for starting this company. A set of, like, let's say, conditions on if I'm going to do this CEO founder thing again, I'm going to do it my way, but not that selfish. It's more of like, there needs to be a lot of significant rationale to spend time and energy of myself and the people I'm going to pull on board for this that make it worthwhile. And to me, there's a set of reasons, let's say, not a ton, that make by the book Silicon Valley startups not worthwhile. But the Pasteur ISI structure, Pasteur Labs is public benefit startup. Don't get me wrong, super for profit. We're venture backed. But the public benefit aspect means that instead of my decisions on where to allocate resources and how to generate revenues aren't 100% beholden to shareholders, meaning 100% maximal stock value, which is more relevant to public companies, really. Instead, with a public benefit corp, it's 50%. And the other 50% of my decision-making authority, so to speak, is to a public benefit mission that is just right on our incorporation docs. That mission says that we are building Nobel Turing technologies that advance science and society for all humankind. Now, intentionally broad, but what that really means is if, for example, there's a board meeting a year from now, and we look at the revenue streams, and like 80% of them are coming from selling data to hedge funds, the board is responsible for firing me in that situation. So I am held responsible, accountable for pursuing what we call Nobel Turing technologies, which can get into the weeds on that for sure. The nonprofit ISI, 501c3 nonprofit, has the exact same mission in its charter, and it exists as a sister organization. Basically, it exists to allow us some flexibility with partnerships and mainly independent researchers. So there are several PhD grants that come out of there for a few universities. There's some funding that goes to a couple other university labs. For the most part, areas of simulation intelligence that at Pasteur Labs we know are important, but do not have the bandwidth at this point in time to really dedicate and push forward. So we want to keep raising up other parts of the ecosystem in that way.
That's amazing. So I know you touched a little bit on that, but what was really the vision behind them, like the goal in terms of technology, product offering, and then this vision behind having the two? Because it sounds like some people might just say, well, you could just have an R&D arm, right? Or R&D team, right? Well, it's not really the same thing, simplistically thinking. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah. I kind of react to arguments like that about things about like an R&D arm, but also this class of cases being made for how to build a platform, and what people assume is a good approach, or the obvious approach, is getting the wheels moving with a few like data points in market and get that experience. And you're going to be narrow and specific. You're going to be hands-on and bespoke. But don't worry, because you keep saying the word platform, 3 years from now, you'll be able to just pull all of your teams back and say, hang on, now we're going to operate this way and sell this way, and we're going to promote this way and build in. And it's one of those like, okay, that would be nice. Point to one example of companies, not even in tech, just companies in history where that's proven worthwhile. Similarly, with like a R&D arm, I would say the analogous sort of efforts might be with larger corporations, more mature, that have sponsorships or PhDs. They throw money at universities. That is certainly helpful. There is very little kind of back and forth, or even like the whole being greater than the sum of its parts sort of effect when you are kind of doing it as a corporate mandate of supporting universities and other independent researchers. And an example is we have simulation intelligence residencies, and this was based on, let's say, like 2016, 2017. Google AI started doing this. I know OpenAI had a couple of these. Microsoft's done it. And ours, we actually have 2 of them kicking off in a couple of weeks. We have a very accomplished professor during their sabbatical as one. And we have a master's student in Germany who really wants to plug together a few sets of like industrial software tools in digital engineering. And we happen to have, unbiased, the best software stack to really make that possible to use machine learning. So just very broad, I would say, caliber of like what they're focusing on and experience and everything. And because of our structure, I, as the CEO, by default, can say yes, or it's like, you need to convince me to support this, but I mean, I can count the number of times I've said no on one hand.
It sounds like really unique opportunities come from running the two, and then also probably very unique challenges and advantages than just running a traditional one company, one focus, or one product.
Yeah, I have to admit the challenges aren't necessarily there. The most challenging part so far is explaining, um, and it's kind of like in fundraising. Say last year fundraising for our seed round, we closed it at the end of last year. It got to be like at that point of investment committee reviews, like when the partner or whatever would take it to their committee, is I've seen enough of these memos. It's like, here's this question that's going to come up. And it's like, oh, okay, so now I'll explain this. And people are just like poking at the thing that doesn't fit their sort of checklist of venture capital investments.
Right.
But don't get me wrong, that there will be challenges, just like there would be challenges of having it all under one roof.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sounds like quite a unique challenge, that explaining, and not only to VCs, but have you had that hurdle when you're talking about to like customers or to people when you're hiring or anything like that? Or is it more the understanding clearer and in line with people that are like on the ground level?
Oh, it's come up with hiring a little bit, um, where I've seen in a few situations, candidates will almost convince themselves that it's like, oh, I no longer qualify for this, or this title sounds like these other titles, so I'm not what they're looking for.
Interesting.
And we have a set of job descriptions and also these structures between like the nonprofit and the for-profit, and other efforts in open source. We support like the machine learning simulation channel. It's just purely education. It's just really smart PhD student out of Neil Sturry group in Germany, who's just at their terminal, just building and posting it on YouTube and talking about differential equations. And it's like, yes, please, more, keep going. You're like one of us, and we need more of you in this ecosystem. And taking that approach to hiring is like, let me explain, like, sure, that we have this nonprofit, it's a for-profit. 99% of what I talk about, I mean, all of the staff, definitely all of the IP is under the for-profit. But this exists because it speaks to how we approach working and building with people. We want to not say like, here's the playbook, let's find the pieces and put them in and press go. It's like, we want to identify the people that can push us, improve themselves, level up our trajectories in non-trivial ways. And then this playbook, so to speak, has enough sort of wiggle room and flexibility and is written in pencil, not ink, that we can make these things work for people.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. You mentioned in a previous chat that we had weeks ago that you were hesitant to become a CEO again due to burnout, right? And I think you kind of touched on it before. If you were going to be doing it again, you want to do it your way, etc. Can you share more about that period and what ultimately convinced you to take on a role again or start a new company?
Yeah, it's funny to say, certainly to potential investors in those conversations, um, that coming off the heels of exiting my last company, part of that burnout was certainly biting off too much for a first time founder and trying to build a co-developed product that was distributed based on clinical trials in Canada and in test facilities across Arizona, and then with some processing facilities for these blood samples in Boston, and selling research tools into big pharma. It was just way
A
too
lot.
much. A ton of those learning lessons based on just observing myself, let's say. But the burnout was certainly real, and it did take some people. I mean, poking and kind of pushing me to ask, like, um, why are you a CEO? But then also just like, why are you still CEO?
Mm.
And especially in that company, was open to like, hey, if I can hire someone that's going to do this job better than me, I would love to. And I know I can focus and be valuable as a CTO or
Yeah.
any other roles. But then exiting that company and being super burnt out, it wasn't what I was going to sign up for again. But it came down to this sort of, I guess, reductive reasoning, and it's also how I view. I mean, I kind of qualify other startups in this way. For the most part, those that come to me for like my angel investing or scouting for other funds, is that yeah, the technology challenge, just like we were saying about my career interests, it has to be there. It has to be like a step change in something real fundamental in computation or data, definitely AI and machine learning. With this reductive reasoning, it's like, okay, I'm going to start from a place of no matter how excited I might be or passionate about this, I need to really kind of beat that down. I need to be really critical. I need to start from a place of like, no, and persuade myself to that this is viable, rational, important, and
Yeah.
so on. So it kind of starts from like, given this idea, concept, or better phrase, as like a future state of the world as it could or should be, and you then eliminate the various ways that sort of inflection or set of goals can manifest, like what other company would be doing this, why aren't they doing it, what other startup, like who should start that other startup, can this be spun out of academia, why not, is government funding this, did they back in 1985 and haven't revisited it, like why and why not. And then and if you're still not coming up with a solution or pointing to different players to take responsibility, it's like, okay, well, why me? Why now? The why now has just as much to do with, it has more to do with the timing of technology readiness in your specific sector, but also other areas you need to integrate, like different distributed computing and software stacks and things. You can't just
Yeah.
look at applied physics or machine learning. And then it's also, why now? Is there a market pull, or am I going to be able to create this market pull with like a minimum viable sample of a thing, not even a product? And it's also thinking back to, let's say, from 2012 to 2018, the AI research startups that raised a lot of money and brought out a lot of smart people. And admittedly, I was one of them in a few places. Looking at those and also being there or just understanding, it's like, okay, there was this week where now we need to figure out product. Why didn't that happen like day one of this company? Um, So addressing all those things, and then if you're still like pointing at yourself and saying, okay, I guess I should do this. It really shifts the sort of calculus from this place of like excitement and passion to start a company, or really anything challenging in multiple dimensions, but definitely starting a company. It's like, okay, I'm so passionate, but now I'm responsible. This will not exist. That future state of the world will not happen unless I make it exist.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, the majority of the logic that brought me to come to terms with, okay, sign me up, we're doing it again. And having incredible people to support me that were nudging me in that direction, but also the kind of people that is like, I haven't talked to them in 10 years, but I give them a phone call and tell them I'm starting something new. And they send in their notice the next day to come work for me. And it's just all those factors together. It's about 3.5 years ago, and I absolutely don't regret it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like it was the right time and the right project for sure. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Do you have any advice? And I'm asking this without knowing, so you might want to
Mm-hmm.
tell me no, but do you have any advice or even experience with how you maintain a healthy work-life balance? Or if, I mean, actually, I take that back. I've had this conversation a few times recently about like this work-life balance narrative that it's not really a thing if you're an
Well, at
entrepreneur.
least you're saying balance and not separation.
Yeah, it's just all interwoven, and how you manage to do the things you need to do, whether it's rest, meditate, exercise, family, whatever it is. But some people don't have that, right? They're just, hey, I get up, I work, and I work all day, and then it's bedtime, and I sleep for 4 hours. So I'm curious about you. After your previous experience, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's something that if I get up here and say this and that, and these are like the first things you need to do every morning, but really, if you get anyone giving you legitimate answers to this, um, who are we kidding? Like, I have ideas, I have practices. The best I can do is control experiments on my patterns of behavior and taking care of myself and satisfaction in the people around me, and how I can be in the moment with them. And that's constantly evolving, and being mindful of that as a process and not like a template, I think is important. There will never be this perfect stasis. And I am someone that have fluctuated up and down on intensity in work and spreading myself thin versus like very intense focus. And know that in the, if I were to kind of peel it back and say I can't push it to 11 all the time or something, um, that's almost worse. It gets to that place of deeply unsatisfying, kind of like I was saying, how to do the startup thing, it has to be, have to rationalize it as something that it's worth the time and energy. And my time and energy sitting around really frustrates me, and I think is more detrimental than maybe burning the candle at all the ends too much. That said, the experience, and like you were asking about the previous startup and being burnt out and everything, the takeaway is patience. There's patience kind of at the big picture of understanding how these elements are fitting into sort of a macro process over time, and knowing that there is time to think and then act, not just react. And there's also patience that being in the thick of it, it can be really thrilling that you have 100 ideas a minute, and you have this sort of rolling to-do list in your head, and you kind of like chip off like, oh, reminder, I need to text this investor, I need to edit slide 3 for this confidential statement at the bottom, I need to send this revised employment agreement to this person, and I have to thumbs up this comment on Slack so then this person knows, like, they can, whatever. The patience to know, like, you're on top of those things. You don't have to be like playing through those in your mind's eye constantly. Kind of taking a step back and noticing that, like, when you're in that moment, you're in that just almost in the zone as deep tech founder. That it's just the balance is really knowing that, like, you don't need to solve and address all the things right now, and it's usually better when you don't. You just take a beat.
That's good. That's good advice, actually. So look, your company's there at the forefront of AI research. Can you, if we're going back to the companies themselves, can you share some more of your exciting projects and the research initiatives that you're currently underway at Pasteur Labs and ISI?
Yeah, for sure. The way that I like to not necessarily say this is our product motto, but often describing our product in the ways that we build and everything, I'm careful to say, or particular to say, that we are constantly doing R&D at the intersection of physics and AI. And the intent is to advance the computational and software tools and processes of others doing their own R&D in areas that are like applied physics. They are in nuclear energy, it's in aerospace, it's in manufacturing, it's in chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, and that informs in really significant ways how we continue to do our own R&D in AI and physics. Now, how is that a product? We are building what is a pure platform here. So with the previous comments about how, like, it is a fool's errand to think that you can do a few bespoke specific products or solutions and then say, hey, we have some data points with the market, let's back it up and build a platform. The pure platform is really saying we have our underlying technologies, and to your question about the AI R&D, our underlying technology is very much autodiff native software, and autodiff as an automatic differentiation is the the interesting part, at least to me, behind deep learning. Automatic differentiation is the workhorse behind deep learning, and why anything like LLMs and so on useful at all. And automatic differentiation is something that does not play nice with existing software tools in digital engineering. And those software tools are working with physics solvers and numerical optimization and so on. So what we're doing is not sprinkling deep learning and ML on top of the existing tools. We are reshaping those tools to run on autodiff native software such that now they are data driven, and data driven in a way like you can plug in real world data. You can build machine learn models and optimization algorithms that can then work with your traditional physics solvers and numerical optimizers in workflows that your aerospace engineers, your mechies, your computational design engineers, your applied physicists, even people in operations research, they are accustomed to, because now you've transformed the stack that's running that legacy simulation software, but you've transformed it to be autodiff native. And at a higher level, now what that looks like is you have machine learning acceleration running these software tools. And that machine learning acceleration, it literally makes things faster. It speeds up multiple magnitudes the existing physics solvers in certain scenarios. Our research is to make sure that works in a somewhat automated way, a frictionless, interoperable way for our users, but in a reliable and scientifically rigorous way. So understanding that things that are published at ICML and NeurIPS AI conferences to big tech companies and academic labs, that is quote unquote validation for this is looking at some real world data set. So we've solved computational fluid dynamics. No one bats an eye at that in industry. You are still multiple magnitudes too small in the resolution and the scale of the data sets and everything that you're looking at. And you're working in these cleaned, uniform, pristine formats and data structures. Real world is super noisy. So bringing it back to the question, our research at the intersection of AI and physics has a ton to do with, yes, bringing automatic differentiation into those software workflows, but doing so that is scientifically rigorous so our end users can trust it is going to translate to the real world and it's going to faithfully represent the physics of their environments they're working in.
Nice. Thanks for that explanation. Obviously, big problems and a very detailed and challenging problem to solve. I can assume. You have done this before, and obviously we talked about the team that you have behind you and hiring, but how important is it for you to recruit and retain the right and strong members that understand the vision, but then also what strategies have you kind of found effective for, because then it's not just regular, you're not just going to put up a job description, the right person just fall on your lap, right? There's obviously things you have to do here. How have you gone about building such a robust team?
Yeah, just note this should have been your first question because it could take up another hour. So, like I mentioned before, in this role, I'm doing less and less of building the cool shit, but I build the team that gets to build the cool shit.
Yeah.
And that is and always will be my number one priority. It is something that that importance is certainly not lost on the people that do join Pasteur and build this company together. It's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting that you said the word retain. Like, how do you hire and retain? Hire. We have no hiring problem. It's like, I shouldn't say that. We would love to get, I guess, I would say some more product managers. That's been itching as of late. But the nature of who we are and how we have a unique approach and an approach that is legitimately building towards being a catalyst to multiple industries and an approach that is dedicated to science. And like before we started chatting here, was saying, hey, we have this NASA Digital Twin Earth partnership. Look at the other names there. That's Google and NVIDIA, and then Pasteur Labs. We don't have the money to afford that. People see that and know we've earned those rights because of the science and rigorous engineering that we do here and the standards at which we execute. That drives so much recruiting. Now, when you said retain, yes, very important. My approach, and again, this might be in this bucket of look at this founder saying some shit and people not believing this is how I actually operate. But some of learning lessons and things that I do, and honestly, I still strive to do more often, is instead of retain, it's prioritize. Semantics, maybe. But what I mean is my view is hiring well and then prioritizing their careers. And their careers are best aligned with the things that we're doing at Pasteur Labs and who we are at Pasteur Labs. That's why they were hired. But even prioritizing their careers might distract from the immediate Pasteur roadmap or priorities at sometimes. But on the long run, if I'm prioritizing these people and how they are intellectually curious and how they can interoperate and level up and even just like switch paths and try different things, even sometimes if those things mean, hey, we built some amazing things together. Now you want to move into this management role. We can't offer that to you quite yet. Let me help you find a more supportive gig somewhere else. That on the long run is the best like talent retention policy. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And for any leaders and founders out there, I think take note, because if you're putting your team's best interest at heart, and that is their work, their engagement, their career path, even if it's not with you, sometimes you come to the end of the road. And I've mentioned this a lot on the show as well. You get to a point where you like shed staff as well. They were great for that period, that season. And if you can't give them the next thing above, or if they're just not right to take you as a company to the next level, and there's not a natural, real role to move them into to help with that retention and growth, part ways amicably, help them. You've got a ton of context. It's the best thing to do. And then it's a reinforcing culture as well. And then everyone knows that they're going to be treated well and their career is important, their path. They're not just a cog in your vision.
And there's part of that I'll add. I'll try not to meander like I always do. Like everyone buying into that as the culture, there's also some principles that we are really driving home here. One is it's plenty of other places. It's written in blog posts at Infinitum, but it's disagree, commit. And how often do we say like, I'm disagreeing with you, I'm disagreeing? No, it doesn't come up. But it sets the expectation that I am trying to build up and also kind of break down in some ways any sort of concept, idea, pitch, demo, code review, and where it's just like, this is our attitude, and it's coming from, it's not just attitude and going to be confrontational, but it's coming from this place of how we operate is to improve one another. So this is just constantly our mode of operating. It's an exercise of just, and it's also things like I mentioned at the top, like in the weeds, sort of learning lessons from being a professional software engineer. I mean, one of those is you fuck up once. We have in our list of like virtues and things, and people call me. I mean, all I have to say, and you're forgiven, is ask for forgiveness, not for permission. We operate that way. But when I say fuck up once, is that, believe me, people do that a lot more often than once. It's encouraged. But if there is like a course correction or advice or saying, this is how we operate, or you need to be more diligent in this sort of thing, we don't have time for that to be corrected again. Like that, you can't make mistakes more than once like that. So it is, yes, prioritizing the people, but don't get me wrong. It's like, it's not freewheeling blue skies, do what you want. We are responsible for delivering and improving with one another.
Yeah, makes sense. That's great insight. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I think it speaks to the culture and obviously the vision that you have for your team and the future of how you build the company as well. Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of the AI space? Are there any emerging trends, technologies that you are excited by, or that you think can be game changers?
How do I not be pessimistic here? Gosh, I also, I don't know, people probably assumed, but I didn't say at all today that there are zero LLMs or chat interfaces or any of that going on here. Um, for a lot of pragmatic reasons, like to the scientific rigor and everything I was describing. So I'm not exactly thrilled or excited by most of those. If anything, I'm in anticipation of, um, let's say, a value correction in several dimensions of the startup landscape. Both, I mean, obviously funding, but also technology priorities and how people kind of credit and validate technologies. So, what excites me? Um, there is, I would say, and of course I'm biased, but I will relate this. Yeah, it's related a bit to what we're doing, and speaking to the timing of the why now for starting this company in Pasteur Labs is that this is the first time in history that we can actually define what simulation is. It, I mean, it made sense in like 80s and 90s sci-fi books, like Greg Egan novels and like the Autoverse, but it's just like, okay, the industry 4.0 digital twins that were hyped to death in 2014, 2016, no glorified data dashboards. And now we're at a place where it's like, oh, we can have dynamic emulation running on-prem or even like on controls that are able to do things like near real-time learning, also be intuitive for machine operators or others that are obviously not machine learning experts, not even software people, to work with some interfaces that allow them to translate domain knowledge into that type of model. Certainly not LLMs for a lot of reasons. And this is the idea of simulation that everyone has been expecting,
Yeah.
honestly. And it gets to the what excites me when I think about like a quote unquote sci-fi to reality sort of stuff. And it is our actual product tagline. I gave you that spiel about R&D for R&D earlier. Our product tagline is the IDE for reality. But the way I really think about that, and it makes me really curious, is tapping into the source code of reality. Um, our research is very much in differentiable physics. I describe it as AI physics powered by automatic differentiation. Shove those words together, differentiable physics, and being able to program that in software, in silico, and have near zero information loss to the in situ environment, the real world, is basically like kind of just double clicking and having a terminal open in front of a small modular nuclear reactor or a material synthesis or a any sort of like experiment machine.
Yeah.
And that is something that is like, yeah, we can imagine it, but also is like, can kind of tell you how to get there. There's a lot of shit to figure out. It's going to take a ton of de-risking and validating. Don't get me wrong, but you know, the road's there. That's what innovation, I guess, that we're on the precipice of really excites me.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing all of these insights, your journey, and about the companies. It's been A pleasure having you on the show. Glad we finally got it on the calendar.
Yeah.
Before we go, do you have any final thoughts or advice for aspiring entrepreneurs or technologists listening today?
Oh, yeah. And again, I'm going to poke at like the semantics here about aspire. I understand not many people see things I do or get joy out of the work in ways that I do, but I really think it's unfortunate that aspiring entrepreneur is like a goal that people or a title or a path that people set for themselves. Um, Maybe it's rewarding, but I think the entrepreneur aspect should be a consequence. Um, like aspire to build,
Mm.
and if what you're going to build requires entrepreneurship, do that.
So it's
Um,
of the
Aspire
direction.
to like invent technologies, not aspire to have the most citations on Google Scholar for your papers.
Yeah.
Um, it's like aspire for the real world instances of having impact and not for some like retweet count or some sort of shallow reality bubbles that we find ourselves in. So I think that the advice is, yeah, go push, build, be passionate, of course, fail and learn from it. But those shouldn't like starting a company shouldn't be the goal in
Yeah.
itself. You should really value the less glamorous, the not so shiny moments. And you'll know it, at least for me, looking back, it's like when people congratulate you for a thing, um, that's cool. But it's like, I don't know, 9 months ago, I was so much happier and fulfilled when I actually got that experiment running.
Yeah.
And now I'm just getting this award or there's an announcement of our funding, whatever. So I don't know if that's advice or pessimism, what cynicism, but I don't know. I hope maybe there's more than one person that sees things like I do.
Yeah, I think it's a unique perspective, but it's also um I don't want to say the right one because it's different for everyone, but it's like
Yeah.
it's a way of thinking that is more um probably more impactful and meaningful long term than because I hadn't thought about it in that way. Like aspiring to be an entrepreneur, aspiring to be a CEO or whatever is great, but like for what reason? It's a byproduct of the direction you've chosen. If you've chosen to build, like you said, something or
Mhm.
create something to make that tangible for the world to see it, it's not the only route. You don't have to start a company, right? You could be an employee and do it as part of a bigger company, you could whatever, but it tends to be a path people take for that reason. But if it's just, hey, I want to be my own boss, that's um,
I'll tell
putting,
you that reason has more cons than pros.
yeah, I know. I was
Yeah,
gonna
the
say,
make your own hours is bullshit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree. All right, look, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Where can our listeners learn more about you, Pasteur Labs, and ISI, and keep up with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the best places that I promise we will be more communicative going forward, especially with some product launches in the next few months. Um, Honestly, Twitter, X, Twitter. So the company is at Sim AI for Science, and that is like it's shared between Pasteur Labs and ISI. Announcements of any sort will come through there, and also my personal handle, Alex Lavin underscore C137. If you're a Rick and Morty fan, you got it. That I think is the best outlets, and through there we'll also be showing off some really cool expert insights and interviews and white papers and things that will be coming out on our website, but you'll be able to hear it through those channels.
Amazing. All right, perfect. And we'll put all of this in the show notes as well, so people have those links there. Well, look, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Excited for this episode to come out, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg.
Pleasure.